Oh my god, g'day! Welcome back to my theatre-themed YouTube channel. My name is Mickey Joe, and if you promise to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications, then I promise to stop speaking with this attempted Australian accent for the foreseeable future. I also apologise to the entirety of Australia while I'm here. But today I am going to be talking to you all about Priscilla the Party, which I was recently invited to see in London. Now this is a new interpretation of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert on stage that retains a lot of what it was as a stage musical, but also, you know, showcases it in a new setting and in a new way. I'm going to talk at length about how exactly this production works and what you can expect from it, because it is not Mamma Mia the Party, let me tell you that. Oh, and if you haven't met me before, my name is Mickey Joe. I'm obsessed with all things theatre. I am a professional theatre critic here on social media. I review the shows that I have been invited to go and see. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe to my theatre-themed YouTube channel. You can also find me on other social media platforms, and if you have been to see Priscilla the Party here at Outernet already, comment down below with all of your thoughts. I am particularly intrigued to see what other people think of this one, because like many of the shows that I've spoken about recently, there are ways that you can go into this and have a great time, and there are ways that you can go into it and completely not get it, and I think it has a lot to do with expectations. So in today's review, as well as telling you what I thought and what you can expect from the show and the performances and the costumes and the way it works and all of that, we're also going to be setting expectations in the hope that that helps you to have the best possible theatrical experience that you can have. Also, do you like this Priscilla Queen of the Desert crop top that I'm wearing? It's cute. This is from when I did an amateur version of the show, but I injured myself trying to do Starlight Express, so I ended up singing the tenor line in a needlessly strong Australian accent that no one on the creative team asked for in a wheelchair from the side of the stage. On the disco round, yeah. Anyway, I have a job to do. Let's talk about Priscilla the Party here at Outernet. Now, if you haven't heard of here at Outernet and you're wondering what this means, this is a new venue that has been created near to the Dominion Theatre, near to at Soho Place in the West End. And it's not really a traditional theatrical space. They've had concerts there before, but it feels more like a nightclub setup. And so in line with that, what this version of the show is Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, the story from the beloved film, from the stage musical adaptation specifically, as presented in the Cockatoo Club. A little like how the Playhouse Theatre has become the Kit Kat Club, and they've transformed this into a sort of a Berlin nightclub space while still being a theatre. That's what they're trying to do here at Outernet, with considerably less theming. But it's meant to feel like a slightly seedy Australian gay bar, I guess. So, you know. Now, going all the way back, if you do not know Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, this is a beloved Australian film about 3 drag queens who are travelling across the desert. It just comes back, I can't stop it. They're travelling across the desert because they're going to go and perform at a casino, but it's also a journey for each of them in different ways. One of them is a very seasoned drag performer and also a trans woman named Bernadette, whose husband recently tragically died. The other, perhaps the central protagonist, is Tick, who performs in drag as Mitzi Mitosis, and he is the one who is spearheading this journey across the desert for his own personal reasons, which we'll talk about later. And then finally, they have a young, troublesome performer with them named Adam, who in drag goes by Felicia Jolly Goodfellow. Adam and Bernadette specifically butt heads initially, but over the course of the show, as well as traveling to their destination, they are also, like I said, they're going on these journeys for themselves, and they come to become a very close trio. They become a family. It's got to be one of the most heartwarming LGBT narratives on film, and then as an extension on stage. It was first produced as a musical, unsurprisingly, in Australia. Fun fact, when they were workshopping it, it was initially this convoluted stage musical about trying to get the rights to do Priscilla as a musical, but having to go and find the 3 people that it was actually based on. This was the plot of the musical they were workshopping, and then I think they got a few days into this, threw the script over their heads and said, we're just going to do the movie on stage. This was still in, I guess, the earlier days of taking films and just making them the musical, so it didn't seem as obvious at the time. Now, there are 2 really iconic things about the film. One is its soundtrack, and the other is the costumes. We have all of these outrageous drag costumes, many of which are deliberately made to look sort of crafty and created from nothing. There's an iconic dress made out of flip-flops, thongs to the Australians. They're excellent drag outfits, but they are unmistakably and recognisably Priscilla, Queen of the Desert drag outfits, and they are award-winning. They've won a bunch of awards, including the Academy Award. So in every iteration of the stage musical thus far, the set has altered, but for the most part, those brilliant costumes have been retained, and they are for this production as well. And as far as the soundtrack goes, when it came to creating this show on stage, they didn't use original songs. Instead, it is a jukebox musical using a bunch of different songs, some of them from the film soundtrack, others which just make sense in the show. You have I Will Survive, you have Colour My World, you have Go West, you have Don't Leave Me This Way, you have either Kylie or Madonna, depending on which country you're watching it in. They made it Madonna for Broadway because apparently Americans don't know Kylie Minogue. Shame. For shame, Americans. She's the Queen of Australia, don't you know? Padam. Padam. And I have to say, I really love this show. I've seen it before on tour. Like I said, I was almost in an amateur production of it, and it just combines this really heartwarming story with this campy and fun exterior. I don't know that people always necessarily expect it to have as much heart as it does, but I think that is the real strength of the show, that they are such human beings. Beneath the headpieces, the withering insults and the fake lashes. And you also have this score of disco classics. But to what extent does all of that still work when you take it out of a traditional theatrical space and you put it in a nightclub setting? Well, first of all, let me tell you exactly what that looks like. So here at Outernet, it's something of a geographical confusion to me, because as you enter, you then go down, and it's subterranean, it's this underground nightclub literally, but you have this auditorium which clearly has a stage on one end, and there are sort of two small banks of seating on either side of a standing dance floor space. So there are a bunch of different ticket types that you can get for this show. You can get standing dance floor tickets, you can get some of those seats which are on that lower level at the sides, or you can get seats up on a mezzanine level. Now, I didn't actually go up there at all, I can't tell you what's up there, but on the lower level, there is a merchandise desk where you can get not only things from the show as souvenirs, but also things that you can use and enjoy during the show, like cowboy hats and like light up implements. There is also, critically, a bar, and you can get a bunch of different exciting cocktails and other drinks. The show deliberately has 2 intervals. It is done in 3 acts, not because it's super long, like a lot of other shows with 2 intervals, but just to give you more opportunities to go to the bar and buy more beverages. That is the name of the game. Now, when the show actually begins, they use this main stage space, but also this sort of a catwalk runway, parts of which can fully be pushed away and move around. It's a little like Guys and Dolls or Here Lies Love in that sense. More Here Lies Love because the platforms aren't hydraulic, they are being manually moved around, and there are attendants on the standing dance floor level who are trying to move people accordingly. What I will say is that everything that Guys and Dolls has finessed down to a careful science, Priscilla the Party is just now trying to figure out, because I don't know if it's because they aren't quite visible enough or if they aren't quite brightly dressed enough. They're wearing pink, but then the whole thing is under pink lighting, so they're not easy to pick out, and suddenly someone is right next to you going, I need you to move back 10 feet right now, and you can do that, but the people behind you can't, or they don't know about it, so it did feel a little bit wild when I saw the show. As time progresses, this will improve, and if you see it on a slightly quieter performance, that will be less of an issue. But the thing is that these platforms move around any which way and go in and out of the space, and they also have to clear routes for performers to walk in and out of this space, and it's all very unpredictable. You don't know where anything is going or where people are going to arrive from. So even when I tried to plant myself somewhere in the second or third act where I thought, right, I won't have to move much here, I ended up being in a gangway consistently and kept having to shuffle backwards and forwards. I was there with a bunch of other people. We did all get completely divided almost immediately. So I'd say that those are a few things to bear in mind. Something that Here Lies Love did on Broadway that I think this could benefit from is a practice before the show really starts, because you have a character who's been added for this production. The character that used to be Misunderstanding has been reconceived as a new drag queen host named Gay Cliché, played by Trevor Ashley, and they take to the stage at the beginning of the show to lay out the ground rules, one of which, by the way, is don't touch the performers sexually. Like, the fact that that is one of 3 rules makes me question what's already happened during this show. Slightly concerned for all involved. I think the first is no photo or video until the end, until the finale sequence, and the third must be about paying attention to the stage management team and the ushers and doing as they tell you. But it's at that point that I think a little bit of a practice of moving stuff around would be advantageous, just so people know what's going to happen. Predictability helps, I find. Now, this being a 3-act version of the show, it doesn't retain all of the original material. It doesn't retain all of the original set. We don't have an actual bus as such. The image of a bus is created on a video screen that forms the back wall, which is basically the set. You have this one video screen and then you have other sort of props and very small set pieces. We're talking tables, chairs, the occasional barrel, and an absolutely unnecessary drinks trolley that blocked entire sight lines. Like, there's 2 pieces of furniture to make this a bus. I don't even care. Like, I could just tell me it's a bus, I will believe that it's a bus, just get rid of the drinks trolley. Never have I had such beef with a means by which alcohol is distributed. I think I cut across my own point there. What I was going to say is that when they're actually on the bus and driving in the bus and travelling across the desert, then the bus is created using these moving platforms on a diagonal. What the show lacks in set, though, it makes up for in costumes. Many of the costumes, the beloved iconic costumes from the original film, from the previous stage production, are retained and utilised in this show, and that is a visual feast, and that's probably more important than a set design. The glaring omission here is the bus, but we'll talk more about that. There are a couple of intricacies and nuances within the plot which are curtailed in order to condense this into a 3-act structure. They don't have a young actor playing Benji, Tick's son, but they find a way around this. We'll get to it. Felicia doesn't lip sync to the iconic opera in a shoe on top of the bus, instead is sitting on a mirror ball, Miley Cyrus style, while one of the divas, Visible, does a beautiful operatic aria. Some songs are cut. We don't have the flashback with Bernadette performing as one of Les Girls and the song of Fine Romance. Some of the scenes are shortened. There's a line that Bernadette has as a punchline that has been taken out, but the rest of the joke is still there. Makes me so upset. And it still works, but the line used to be, at least they had a Kmart in Broken Hill, which they've changed to Primark so people understand the reference. They knew what a dress was, and that's where it ends in Priscilla the Party. But in the stage show, Bernadette would go on to say, there's a woman out there wearing her best piece of corrugated iron, which I think is such a brilliant line, and it's not like it adds to the running time. Put the punchline back in, you cowards. But I'm realising that I am moving from describing the show to reviewing the show, so let me tell you what I thought of Priscilla the Party. Now, just like that one little bit of dialogue, there are hundreds of little things that I could talk to you about. I love the show, and that's something that I went in with. And even until seeing it, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect, because Mamma Mia the Party, which is, I guess, the closest equivalent thing in terms of marketing and branding, that does not do the story of Mamma Mia. That is a dining experience where people are acknowledging that you're in a restaurant and they're performing ABBA around you, and the performances become increasingly elaborate and there is a loose romantic narrative running through it, but it's not really about Mamma Mia. It's about people on the island where Mamma Mia was filmed. Priscilla the Party does the show, and that's the key difference here. But it isn't really equipped in this setting to do the show with the nuance and specifically the heart that it requires, because there is this bright, colourful, campy facade to Priscilla that everyone enjoys. It's on the posters, it's the costumes, it's the numbers, it's the drag, it's all of that. But like I said, there's a heart beneath it. It has this beautiful, earnest, sincere centre, and they still do all of that, and they play it beautifully, but it doesn't really work. So the big picture summary I could tell you here is that when they're doing the production numbers and the songs, that works, because people like that in a club setting, and when they start doing a tender scene about, you know, their enduring struggles with homophobia, that falls a little bit more flat, sadly, because when people are standing around with drinks, wearing cowboy hats, it's just not what they came for. It doesn't really go. I can't imagine there are many book musicals that would work well in this kind of a club setting. Something like Rocky Horror is probably the only thing that I think would, or something that's entirely sung through, because the dialogue in Rocky Horror doesn't really have an ounce of sincerity to it. But Priscilla has that tenderness, and it just doesn't feel well served by this particular environment, or at least not at the performance that I attended. There's something slightly patronising about these 3 queer characters going back to find that homophobic slurs have been spray painted on the side of their screen bus at the back of the stage, and having slightly inebriated women going, "Aww." And I get that it comes from a place of sincerity, but like I said, just a little bit patronising and uncomfortable. And because of this, they do seem to go through the book scenes at as fast a pace as possible. They know that they need to get to the next song because that's what works. So if you don't already know the show, I imagine it could be a little bit hard to follow the narrative if you haven't seen the show, if you haven't seen the film before. If you have, then this is like a fun celebration of it that doesn't amount to the same thing that the stage musical does. It's more like local drag night does a Priscilla-themed performance evening. What does work, however, is all of the numbers, is all of the songs, is having them performed that close to you. That's really fun and that's really vibrant because it's the kind of music where you want to get up and dance, so now you can, now you have that option. And they do their best to situate the audience as the audience of those performances, because a lot of what we see in the show is actual drag performances at the initial club where the show starts in Sydney, at the various dive bars that they visit on their journey, and then finally at the hotel where their show is playing at the end. We become that audience, and that's good. It allows us to dance and vibe along and give them the support that we want to, having seen their story. I will add that the choreography is not necessarily always thrilling. The work that the ensemble do is good, but it just isn't an expansive enough stage, especially when you're dressed as a giant green cupcake or a giant pink paintbrush, and everyone has a lot of width to them. It doesn't allow you to do anything too elaborate. So in the number MacArthur Park, for example, you know the one, someone left the cake out in the rain. All of the ensemble are dressed like these giant green cupcakes. It's campy, it's iconic, and Owain, who is playing Tick, kind of can only just give us enthusiastic arms over and over again because there's nowhere really for him to go. And once they get onto this catwalk section, not only is it not really wide enough to allow them to do much other than go up and down and pass each other, but also if you stand too close to it, there are moments when it does seem like just slightly treacherous. I have concerns about the stage, honestly. I'm sure it's been risk assessed, they're probably fine. And like I said, there are handfuls of little moments like this throughout. At no point does it ever feel like it really overtakes the success of, certainly at least the original stage version. Like, this nightclub setting does afford the experience a certain novelty, but I don't know that it necessarily enhances the material, even during the big numbers. Now, there are a couple of things I said we would come back to. Let's talk about the bus, because the bus is an iconic part of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. It's the titular role. Tony Sheldon, the show's original Bernadette, tells a story about the first preview performance where the bus, who the producers were calling the real star, didn't come out of its dressing room because at the first preview the bus didn't work, so they were just miming the actions of the bus, and he told a big joke about it, and the audience still enjoyed the show, and so Tony remarked that the show was going to be a hit and they could do it without the effing bus. Little did he know at that stage that that's what would end up happening in this production, and as the show has toured since London, increasingly we've always had less and less of a bus, until now we literally have bus made of air. And I just think that, yes, we have the costumes, but if you're trying to sell some kind of a visual spectacle, it is disappointing not to have the big pink bus. I think there's no real way around that. And I'm not suggesting that they could do it in this setting, but I'm not the one who said, let's do Priscilla in an underground nightclub in Tottenham Court Road. And this isn't just me being precious about a set piece, because the other impact of this on the narrative is that we don't really feel the sense of a journey. There's just different scenes in different places, and we don't feel like we are traversing Australia and traveling through the desert. That doesn't quite come across because we don't have enough set pieces to really articulate that. Like, you can tell that it's happening in the plot, we just don't really feel the weight of it. The other thing I said we would come back to is Tick's son Benji. Now, this is a big component of the plot. This is Tick's entire emotional arc and the whole justification for the trip and for the show. Tick has this wife named Marion, they have a young child who he's never met, and he is travelling to this casino in Alice Springs not only to provide a new entertainment drag show, but also to meet his son for the first time. And ordinarily a child actor would play this role in the show's second act, but as our host Gay Cliche points out, when we arrive at that section of the show, there are no children in the Cockatoo Club. And so instead, a member of the audience is invited on stage in order to fill in that role. I don't know if this is a plant. I sort of hope that it is. But at the performance I was at, which was opening night, they pulled up this member of the audience, and there is homosexual vocabulary that I could use by way of a description here if I wasn't planning on being so professional, but they got up this twink in a rugby top who delivered this line about like having not acted since school, and then they take him backstage and they like give him lines to prepare and rehearse, and he comes back out wearing a radio mic headset, and then they make him get changed in front of the audience and put on pajamas, like they take his top off and put pajamas on, which felt gratuitous. And he does this scene with Owen, who's playing Tick, where he's calling him dad and he's pretending to be his young child. And again, in the most professional way I can possibly articulate it, while they are playing this scene, this father-son scene, because he was not a child and because of the vibes that were then inadvertently coming across, whether intentional or not, I was just watching this unfold thinking, you know what? There's probably porn that starts like this. Like, that was the direction that the scene ended up going with. There was this slightly unexpected sexual chemistry between the two of them, and like that, understandably, not the purpose of the show, and not the conclusion of Tick's journey to go and meet his son. He is a nervous father. He's not a daddy. Let's get that right. Now, that could have been an entire accident, legitimate audience plant, or it could have been a little more purposeful. I have no idea. I'm choosing to remain naive, but it does feel like one of the ways in which the heart of the show has been a little bit compromised in this production. But I feel like I've said enough and given you a sense of what to expect here. Let's talk about the performances. So I would like to begin, perhaps unexpectedly, with the character of Gay Cliché, who is our hostess for the evening, a drag performer played by Trevor Ashley, who is just fantastic, has all of the abundant charisma necessary to fulfill this role. Some of the material, though delivered entirely comfortably and capably, is a little too, and maybe I'm just being very precious at this stage. You can tell me I'm being precious in the comments, I won't mind. But it's a little bit gay club cliche when there's multiple jokes being like, obviously there's a dark room backstage, obviously we're doing loads of lines of coke in the bathroom. Like, it's just a little much. But then subtlety is not the word of the day, I appreciate. The really winning thing here is that Trevor, as well as playing Gay Cliché, also plays Shirley, an iconic character from the film, from the show, when they get to a particular, clearly not queer-friendly bar in Broken Hill. Shirley makes it clear to them in no uncertain terms that they are not welcome, but their charm manages to win over the locals for a few hours at least. And I think reinterpreting Shirley as a drag character actually works really, really well, and needless to say, Trevor does a fantastic job. Trevor Ashley, shining star on that stage. As is my friend Reese Kerridge, who plays Adam/Felicia, who feels born to play this role. And it's a really delicious part, whether you remember Guy Pearce in the film, or Oliver Thornton in the original West End production, or Nick Adams on Broadway. There's this brilliant foolishness to it that Reese manages to capture very well. Reese feels the most youthful of all of the Adams I've ever seen on stage. Sometimes the character can come off as feeling a little bit too seasoned, and Reese just feels so full of energy and enthusiasm, but more importantly, naivety. The character is also playful and rambunctious, and there is what becomes a very dark scene towards the end of the show and towards the end of this character's narrative, where they go out in an even more unforgiving part of the country, trying to look for some romantic liaison, shall we say, with men who perceive Adam initially to actually be a woman. Adam ends up in some almost very aggressive hot water, and the whole justification of Adam doing this makes far more sense when the role is played like Reese does, with that naivete and that foolishness and that playfulness at the forefront. Otherwise, it begins to feel a little bit too calculated and like this person absolutely should know better. Then we have Dakota Starr, who plays Bernadette, which is a beautiful role, and I am thrilled to pieces that this has been cast not for the first time, but for one of the first times in an authentic way, i.e. having a non-binary performer playing this trans role, not having a cis male performer play a trans female role. I know not everyone agrees with me, but that is my opinion. And it's no surprise that Dakota brings more humanity to this role than I think I've ever seen. It actually sort of more closely resembles Terence Stamp in the film because it's a little more understated. Like, that is not a broad theatrical performance as the character has become on stage with the Tony Sheldon performance and then subsequent interpretations. And I am here for the authenticity, and I love the humanity of that a lot. I would also welcome just a little more theatricality. Some of the lines are so delicious. The whole "listen here, you mullet," and the response of Bernadette to the man who is about to assault Adam. I just long for it to be a little more vibrant and a little more out there, a little more charismatic. Owain Williams I thought was just fantastic as Tick/Mitzi, and it's probably Tick's storyline who is the most compromised by this version of the show because the entire impetus is meeting his son, and that ultimately is played for laughs or whatever it's played for. But you do get this palpable nervousness from Tick, and you also get the charisma and the charm and just the effervescent joy. I think Owain is a brilliant presence on stage. Fantastic to watch, lighting up that space, all of those good adjectives. We must talk about Sarah Louise, Grace Galloway, and Gracie Lai, who are the divas. If you don't know, at many moments in the show, the divas sing vocals that the drag performers lip sync to. They sing songs like "I Will Survive" and an entire medley of songs at the end of the show. And there is one extra diva, Kimberly Blake, plays the diva I mentioned before, who sings the operatic number. Incredible vocal control from her. She also plays Tick's wife, Marion, and is very fun in that role, but it's the opera performance that's maybe even the vocal standout moment of the entire evening. Like, no one is necessarily going to Priscilla the Party expecting a vocal performance that stunning. I do also enjoy Stephen Serlin as Bob. I think this is another charming aspect of the show and his entire plotline, and Lucy Park as his wife, Cynthia. She feels, again, a little different to all of the Cynthias I've seen before, and I think it feels a little less offensive, perhaps. This is still a dubious role within the show, but it's because she feels a little more clueless, a little more foolish, that it comes across a little differently. But those, I guess, have been my thoughts about Priscilla the Party here at Outernet in London. If you have any inclination to go and see this show, I say go and check it out. Have a nice time, take your friends. I'm not someone who enjoys clubbing all of the time, but I don't mind going to a nightclub that's also a musical theatre performance. I think definitely a bigger group of people is probably the perfect way to enjoy this show. I think if you are already familiar with the film or the stage musical, that will make it easier for you to enjoy. Just be aware that what you're going to is, to many extents, a stripped back version of the show that is more about this sort of pseudo-immersive experience and the nightclub setting, and it's just a fun tribute to Priscilla without being the new best way you've ever seen it done. But of course, those are just my thoughts. If you have already seen Priscilla the Party here at Outernet, comment down below with what you thought of the show and your experience. If anyone has any other questions about this particular theatre-going experience, ask them. I will do my best to answer, or someone else may be able to help you in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my theatre-themed YouTube channel for more reviews coming very soon. Hit that notifications button so you don't miss any of my upcoming content. There are so many videos. And I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day.
For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh my god, hey, thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!